how do you find a non-technical co-founder? And I want to show the other side because, Will, we have a lot of founders that are technical that come here and they go, I kind of suck at business and et cetera. So, you know what, let's talk about this for a moment. Let's step back, Will. I'm curious your opinion. Do you think technical founders need non-technical founders? What are your thoughts on just going there with that?
I do. If I'm being honest, I do. And here's why. The thing about a technical founder is the nature of being technical tends to be a little bit one-dimensional.
True.
Right?
Yep.
Technical folks tend to have a highly specific skill set that sometimes runs at the expense of other skill sets. Okay. So let me give you some examples. For folks that are highly technical, sometimes I'm kind of, this isn't always true, but it's true enough that I'm going to say it. They're not always the most social folks, right? Right? Sometimes just not, right? They invested a lot of time in being technical at the expense of some social side. Or because they weren't that social, they found the technical side kind of diving in to be more appealing. And the reason I say this is because I actually grew up with both. I'm a total weirdo in that way. And Ed, I know you well enough. You have some of this too. I was a super deep nerd and I was super outgoing at the same time.
Yeah.
Which sounds kind of almost running antithetical. But here's what would happen. I don't like technology. I love technology. And when I was a little kid and I got my Commodore 64 computer in the 80s, I was on that thing, dude, right? 24/7. I was on a 300 baud modem. Right, which is, you can't have less baud, right?
Oh man,
you know, people are like, oh man, I the 56K or whatever 57K like modem. This is 57,000 versus 300. Okay, so this is that long ago. You could watch the bytes go across. Anyway, my point is, I've been at this for a long time, and I loved my computer. Right? I love technology, okay? But I also really enjoyed being outgoing and doing other things. I watched a lot of my friends who were really onto the technical side absolutely eschew anything that was like social or anything else like that. So I get those guys. I understand why they were so focused on technology, but I also watch them, this is my point, I also watch them not develop these other skills. Now let me go to the other side of my super extrovert side, right? Where I love sales and I love marketing and I love putting on events and things like that. That person and all the people I would meet in that world would have incredible charisma, but they rarely had the ability to actually know how to build anything.
Oh, yeah.
Right. They were great at selling it. They couldn't build anything. So going back to the original question, if I'm a technical co-founder, I'm going to look at these other skills, could be social skills, creative skills, marketing skills, etc. And I need to value those as much as I want my technical skills to be valued. And I want to look at somebody as the wizard of those skills.
I tell founders all the time, someone has to build, someone has to sell, everybody has to talk to users. And so if you can spread that around, but I'll just be very transparent. Will, you said something very astute. I think it's important. All investors have a different opinion. And I'm just going to share from my standpoint of writing angel checks and being a partner at a fund and making recommendations for checks. When I see a technical solo co-founder or founder, I worry because if they can just build whatever, I find they just run around, they're building, to your point, and I get worried about their focus. And that's when I actually look for them to have at least another technical founder, somebody to just balance them out, bounce things off of, because if you're building, it'd be great to have someone talk to users and be selling to get that feedback loop. And I'll even go so far. I know a lot of investors say we won't invest in solo non-technical founders.
Yeah.
But I'm okay in the beginning if you start off as a non-technical founder and let's say you hired a contractor and you're selling and you're making money. I'll go, we can hire an engineer. We can hire these people later. But that's what worries me about pure technical founders that can kind of build anything. To your point, they're kind of all over the map. And I really worry that my dollars are going to just kind of hemorrhage all over the place and them just building.
Well, the other side of it too is that's awesome that you can build things. How are you going to get anybody to buy it? How are you going to market it? How are you going to sell it? Right? So if you're building in a vacuum, who cares? Right? If nobody knows about it, it's good as it doesn't exist. Right? So when I look at somebody that's technical and they're building this wonderful technical thing, I'm kind of like, okay. And then, like, what do you mean? And then I built it. I was like, who cares? If you can't find any customers for it, if you don't become good at that, then it doesn't matter that you can build it. I go to the flip side. Somebody that's got the great idea, they can get it in customers' hands, but they can't build it. Now, in both cases, you can hire people, not co-found, you can hire people to do those things. But
absolutely.
If you are looking for a founder, somebody, a partner at that level, what I look for is how do they complement you? How can they do something that you can't do? Now, here's what's interesting. It doesn't mean that they have to have a totally different skill set, okay? I've seen great partners that are both creatives. I've seen great partners that are both technical, right? And when I say that, their complements are something else. They complement because maybe one is more conceptual and the one is more execution. They complement because maybe one is more conservative and the other is more aggressive. There's different ways to make those complements, but I do think there is some value when you find those right connections.
And investors are going to look for that too. Make sure that you complement each other. Here's my power move, Will. Same thing. We're just put all our best practices on the table. Now, I'm not technical, but there have been times when I have been the technical person because I run all the IP, I do all the delivery. You know, I was building for the most part. And I find that non-technical founders that can sell are actually very motivated by partnering with people who can build it because they're like, oh, I get to be a part of something and I get to have ownership in something instead of like be a mercenary. Like I get to be an actual missionary about the product. And I look for founder market fit if they're going to eventually be a founder. So I immediately look, can they, you know, we talk about this with Ryan, our CMO, about the traction hacking, but can they put a list together of 200 people and can they immediately call and do they take a shot? Do they care about the problem? And are they just totally passionate about getting that solution out in the world? And if that's the case, I go, that's going to be a compliment. And they could be creative. They could do other things. We'll fill that out. But for me, I like to say, hey, what would it look like for us to work together in that way? And that's how I get my non-technical founders. I make sure that they're in that selling seat first.
Yep. What you're saying, though, is you want to see them get some traction.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It makes sense. I also want to caveat, never hire a co-founder, because it will get you an investment, right?
True. Yep.
That is the wrong reason to hire someone. That's like saying, I want to get married so I can have kids. You should want to have kids, but you should want to have them with the right person, not just here's a human that fits, you know, in so I can have kids as a mechanism, right? Like I think that's a dangerous game. Here's a few reasons why. One, that just doesn't work. Right? It's not like if you get a co-founder, you will get investment. And conversely, it's not like if you don't get a co-founder, your idea is all of a sudden shit, right? Like it's how you sell it. When people say that they want you to have a co-founder, what they also mean is they want the right team around you to get stuff done, okay? So just bear in mind that it doesn't have to be a co-founder, and there's a good chance investors won't be part of your future. So hard coding a co-founder into your future because you might get an investor is ridiculous.
Dangerous too. Could become something that you're going to regret. Often it becomes. And by the way, everyone, Will and I, we're about to launch our next venture about relationships and family advice because that's what we like to do here. And hey, I'm just going to say it, Will. I spent time with you and your family, man. Like we're not talking from a point where we observe these things. We're actually comparing it to real world relationships. You and I were both married old dudes, raising kids, running around, you know, all that stuff. It's fun to compare life together.
I agree.
That way.
And the parallels are very strong because in both cases, they're highly committed relationships.